And with that, we invite Miriam to come up here, please.
You want me to restart? Restart? Good. Yeah, okay. All right, so this is what we're going to be seeing throughout the lecture. You know, the topics about fear. What is fear? What are the symptoms? If it's pathologic, if fear and phobia are the same, and what lies behind every phobia. So to start, we're going to start with some definitions for fear. And I think the slide is off. Yeah, the slide is off. The slide is a little off. All right, so as they fix that, okay, all right. So fear is what? Fear is a reaction from the contact with some physical or mental stimulation, which could be an interpretation, an imagination itself, or a belief that generates an alert response in the body. So this initial reaction triggers a physiological response in the body that release stress hormones, which are epinephrine and cortisol, preparing the individual to fight or flee. So what does that mean is that fear is a natural feeling, let's say, because fear advises us of any danger that may surround us. But this fear can also be just in our minds, and that's what it's in here. It could be an interpretation, an imagination, or a belief, not a real thing. And that's where we have to try to distinguish the difference between them. So when my stress hormones are released, then I'm going to be prepared either to fight or to flee, meaning running away from the danger or from the situation. Let's say I'm here speaking to all of you. This can be very frightful, like to be looking at strange people that you don't know what they're thinking about you, and then you have to speak to these people. That can generate a lot of fear and anxiety to some people, right? And we're going to see other situations along the way. So another definition for fear, according to Doug Alarondo in 2006 and Myra and Lopez, is that fear comes in ranges up to its inactivation. Example, it is gradually taking a proportion until the individual has its stabilized feelings and emotions, and it's divided into 6 phases according to the extent and immensity. So prudence, caution, alarm, anxiety, panic, and terror. So it gradually progresses if you do not control it. All right? So like I said before, fear can be real, like something that is really threatening, like this dog is trying to catch the guy. Or it could be just imaginary. It's in our minds. It's things that we think they exist, but they are not really there. Okay? All right, some people, they are afraid of death. Some people are afraid of being alone or walking in the streets. Some people are afraid of having a broken heart, so they're not going to go into a relationship because they are afraid of not being loved or not being able to love back. Some people are afraid of being broken, not having any money, or not being able to survive in the world. Some people are afraid to speak in public, like I said before. Others are afraid to be robbed. Others may be afraid of seeing spirits. Are you afraid of seeing spirits? Good. Because this is a Spiritist center and they are all here. All right. So fear surrounds our lives most of the time. Because can you say that you're not afraid of any of this? We all have our fears, right? We all have some things to cope with. So if we look, failure is the next exit when we don't take care of the things we need to take care. Okay? So if we don't observe us when we are afraid and check to see if is it really necessary to be afraid now? Is it a real thing or is it imaginary? Am I creating things in my head or this danger is really there? So when we are afraid of things, and like Dalarondo and Myra said before, fear may progress and then it can become pathologic, okay? And it can create anxiety and phobias. So we're gonna look at some of the consequences of being afraid, but being afraid more to the extreme where it brings other consequences into your lives. So fear versus anxiety, okay? If we look here, oh, I'm so sorry, the picture is in Portuguese, but it says, don't be afraid of your dentist. All right, that's what it says in the picture. So we see fear as a reaction to a well-defined object that represents a real or imaginary risk to the individual, okay? That's fear, okay? And then anxiety is a similar reaction to fear, but there is no definition of the object. Anxiety doesn't have a clear object. It's a fear without a focus, which makes it persistent. So sometimes you are anxious or you don't feel like, you can't stay still and you have that anxiety within inside you, or you feel it in your body and you don't know where it's coming from. It could be a lot of things that are accumulated and that you have not worked on. Whereas fear is something that is well defined. All right, so that's the difference between fear and anxiety. So what is the origin of fear? So the psychiatrist Jader Rodriguez from São Paulo, he's from the Spiritist Medical Association of Minas Gerais. He says that fears comes from 4 aspects, okay? The first aspect is that the first would be created by the instinct of conservation, preventing that the individual is exposed to unnecessary dangers. That's what I said. When the fear is real, that's something that you're trying to preserve yourself, okay? Then the second one would be, according to him, the result of a guilt complex originated from facts we deem criminal in past lives or in this one. The third aspect that he brings to us would be the result of atrocious suffering we experience in lower areas of the spiritual world as toys of perverse intelligence. And the fourth aspect is that fear is a consequence of misguided education when the family, in order to control their children, create in their minds pictures of monsters as haunted, boogeyman, demons, not knowing that they are forming torturous mental cliches that will disturb them lately. So that's what he brings to us, these 4 aspects, how fear is generated in our lives. Are there any others? There may be, I don't know. That's what I have researched on, and that's what I'm bringing for you. Okay. So fear versus phobia. So the difference between fear and phobia is quantitative, of time and intensity. Okay? So phobia is when it's more intense and when it stays there for a longer period of time. So some reactions that we can have when we are really afraid. Like I said, we may feel anxious. We may have palpitations, difficulty breathing, sweating, nausea, trembling, dizziness. These are all effects from anxiety and fear in our lives. Right. So again, according to Dalgalo Rondo in 2006, he says that fear is not a pathological emotion, but something universal or higher, of higher animals and man. It's a state of progressive insecurity and anxiety. So it is not pathological. It can be, it's natural. It's a natural feeling. So according to Andre Moreira, he is a doctor and he is also a Spiritist lecturer and writer. He says that fear in its natural flow is beneficial. It generates self-knowledge, self-overcoming. However, if this emotion is exaggerated or obstructed, it becomes a pathology. So it is like the normal fear feeling is not pathological, but if it increases in intensity And if it's very persistent, it may become a pathology. That's what he says. And then if it becomes pathologic, it could become an anxiety, and anxiety has different levels. So the first one is generalized, when it's an exaggerated anxiety and tension, and that it persists for months, and it can affect your life. It causes people to anticipate catastrophic events. So your mind is always catastrophic. You're always thinking the worst. You're always thinking that things are not going to go right, and you're always anxious about what's going to happen in the future. Then we have the panic disorder, which is even deeper, which is an anxiety disorder, because you have panic attacks. When you have panic attacks, it's very hard to control, because you don't really know what's real and what's not real. And sometimes you want to isolate yourself and just be there. You don't want to be with people. And it's very, very hard to cope with it. It's extreme. And most of the time, you need help for that. Then you have the obsessive-compulsive disorders, which is people, there are different levels of obsess and different types of OCDs, you know. So that's unwanted thoughts, repetitive behaviors such as hand washing, counting, cleaning, often performed with the hope of preventing obsessive thoughts or making them go away. They may perform rituals, which is only a temporary relief. But OCD can also be simple things like, I want this to be here. And then if somebody comes here and moves that, that bothers me. And I get either angry or upset, because that's not where I left, and I wanted that there. It has to be there the way I want it. Or you have an office, and you have certain ways that where you want things to be. Oh yeah, I want my notebook here, my computer here, my pen has to be exactly over here. So those are things that people have, and sometimes they don't realize that that can be pathologic. Because if somebody comes and touches your stuff, and you get angry and upset and nervous about that, that's not really normal. Because you could just say, well, I'd like this to be here. Could you please leave it there? But some people really get antsy about that. The next one is social phobia. So also called social anxiety disorder, which is characterized by overwhelming anxiety and excessive self-consciousness in everyday social situations, as well as excess of concern of the judgment of others, like what people think about you. So you are in a group, but you're always thinking if you are being accepted in that group, and then what people are thinking about you. Am I doing okay? Am I disturbing anybody? Am I being an inconvenience? So that's the social anxiety. And we know that as human beings, we all want to belong. Let's say we are all here in the Spiritist Center, okay? If we come here often, we want to make part of that. We want to be part of that. If we want to be part of that, we'll have to follow certain rules and regulations that the Spiritist Center has created for this particular place. So people that want to belong, okay, they'll have to follow the rules and regulations that are here. okay? Because we have this sense of belonging, right? The next one is a specific phobia, which is any kind of anxiety disorder that amounts to unreasonable or irrational fear related to exposure to specific objects, animals, or situations. As a result, the affected person tends to actively avoid direct contact with the objects or situations, and in severe cases, any mention or depiction of them. So, like, let's say I'm afraid of spiders or frogs, and I live in a community where I always see spider webs, or at night, like I walk on the walkway and the frogs are there, so I always avoid that pathway because I'm scared of frogs or I'm scared of spiders, okay? So this is what they're trying to say. Or I'm not a very sociable person, so I'm gonna avoid people. Or I'm not talkative, so I'm gonna be in my corner and not talk to anybody. And we also have the post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD, which is developed after a terrifying ordeal that involved physical harm or the threat of physical harm. So the person who develops PTSD may have been the one who was harmed. The harm may have happened to a loved one, or the person may have witnessed a harmful event that happened to loved ones or strangers. So we see a lot of veterans, for example, with PTSD. Or you may have PTSD after a traumatic car accident, you know, and you may not be able to go behind the wheel again. So there are different things that may cause PTSD. So this is just a graphic to show you the paths of fear and what it can happen. Like fear, you can freeze, means you're not going to do anything. You can just fight against your fear, or you can just flight or flee, which is avoiding the situation or the confrontation or the thing that you are afraid of. And then that's just like for you to have a visual on that. And the next thing we're going to be talking about is the parable of the talents. Do you know that parable? Does anybody know the parable of talents? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to open mine up here to read for you, because I don't know by heart. If it was in Portuguese, I would tell in my own words, but it's in English, so I'd rather read it. So the parable of talents says, "For it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. So now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, 'Master, you delivered to me 5 talents here. I have made 5 talents more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.' And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents here. I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I heap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who he has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So this is the parable of the talents, meaning that the servant that just got 1 talent was so afraid of his master that he did not invest the money and did not duplicate the money. All of the others that got 5 and 2 talents, they were smart, duplicated the money and gave it to his master with interest. But the other one was afraid. So what happened to him? He got no money, and he went to a place of fear, okay, even more fear. So when we look at us and we look at the fears that we feel in our lives most of the time, and especially when we are anxious, most of what we fear, let's say 99% of what we fear and or are concerned about never happens, because it's all in our own minds. And there you can see that we live much more inside here than out there. So everything happens here. So we have to take care of our mental state. We have to observe us, look at us, and see what's real and what's not real, what's possible, what's not possible, what can be done, what cannot be done. Right? So according to Dr. Alírio de Cerqueira Filho, who is also a Brazilian doctor, and he's a psychiatrist and a therapist, and he also is a homeopathic doctor and a spiritist lecturer and writer. He brings this to us. The anxious attempts to control the uncontrollable, which is the outside world, generates a mental hyper-arousal, which is insecurity. So there is a whole belief system coming from this life and from past lives that generate feelings that can be good or bad. And those feelings generate emotions, which are feelings and sensations that generate our behaviors, which means the way we act. Okay? So one thing leads to the other. And like Lao Tzu, he says, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. what's your character, it becomes your destiny, which is pretty much what Dr. Alirio said before. And then another quote for us from Buddha, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. So, in summary, fear generates separateness. Either we feel superior or inferior to others and need to control others and the events in our lives. And also, it generates suffering. So how do we free ourselves from fear? There are a few things that we can do ourselves. Okay? First off, develop self-confidence. That's important. Allow yourself to do what you're good at. So if you're not good at walking by yourself or speaking or doing whatever, try to do what you feel comfortable with. Let go of your attachment to find the right answers. Instead, find your right answers, because everybody has different answers for themselves. Take risks, even if they result in mistakes. If you don't take risk, you already failed. Take responsibility for your choices and the consequences of those choices. Live your life according to a sense of integrity. Acknowledge the ways you do trust yourself, like I trust myself to do what? Okay. Listen to your feelings. If you ignore them, you are without of touch with yourself completely. Intuition speaks to you via your feelings. If you think it's right, go for it. If you think it's wrong, stay away. Develop healthy boundaries. That's very important. Stop abandoning yourself. A lot of us take care of other people, and we don't take care of ourselves. If you don't have the strength to do all that or to do it alone, then you should seek therapy. And you can work with Ericksonian hypnotherapy or past experience therapy or any kind of therapy that you would like to overcome your fears. And we have a video now that I would like to play. I think Luigi left it open there. I don't think they're fine. Okay, there you go. There. He's not, it's open, but I don't think he...
has circled the globe, spreading...
I'm excited to get...
All right, so this video I think is very inspirational, and it brings us like incentive to keep going, you know, and everything that we want is on the other side of fear. So if we overcome it, we'll do it. Thank you for your attention and have a good night.